Welcome back to DESCareers and our digital spotlight platform. I am very excited to be introducing you to our next guest, who comes to us with a career that I do not believe in our 5 years of DESCareers and Spotlight speakers we have ever come across. So welcome Shereen Zarroug to our platform. Shereen comes to us from Belly Baby Mom, and she is a doula. Welcome, Shereen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So nice to meet you.
It is so great to meet you, and I'm really curious about your career. I know that there are aspiring medics listening into this conversation and probably asking themselves, what is a doula? But before we get into that, talk to us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what type of career aspirations you had before you became a doula.
Okay, so I'm Shereen. I'm actually originally from Sudan, but I'm born and raised in Dubai. So this is pretty much home to me. I am married to a Dubaian. I have 3 children. I have a 12-year-old daughter, I have an 8-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old boy, who all keep me very busy. And my background is actually in marketing and advertising and graphic design. So that's what I went to college for, and that's the bachelor's degree that I have. But due to my own personal experiences and my birth experiences, my career path has totally changed, and I found myself working and supporting pregnant women and their husbands and families, new families as well. So just after they have their little ones, offering different kinds of support to them, because I realized that I didn't know much when I was expecting my first or second, and I only started to look into these things with my 3rd pregnancy, and I realized, wow, we actually have a lot of options to support families. And as you mentioned, it's great to kind of spread awareness on this role, because it is relatively new, being a doula and also teaching antenatal or hypnobirthing, which is probably another new term. But it is something that I wish more people knew about, and also the medical system or hospitals. For what I do, I haven't gone into college, medical college, so we are actually not medical professionals, but we do know quite a bit on childbirth support and the physiology of birth and supporting new parents. So that is generally, in a nutshell, kind of what I do.
That's amazing, and it's making me even more curious now about being a doula. So you talked about your previous experience, and you said that, I didn't go to medical school, I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't in the medical profession, but it came to me based on my personal experience, and I've started this career. So can you talk to us about what a doula is exactly?
Okay, so a doula is a non-medical professional, but who does undergo a lot of training, and that you can do either online or in-person training with a doula training organization. And what you learn basically is strategies for support, and that could be emotional support, informational support, physical support for the expectant couples. So a doula really is someone who follows a lot of evidence-based information, and what that means is, being in this field, or the medical field, or really any field, there tends to be so much information out there online, through books, through things that you hear from friends and family. So one of our main roles is really to get all the good latest evidence-based information out there and present that to the couples that we work with. The reason we do that is so that they can go ahead and make well-informed decisions in their journey of pregnancy and birth, and even as new parents. But also, doulas offer emotional support. And that tends to be really, really important as well, for different reasons, and different people have different circumstances. And especially at this time, I would say during COVID-19, we're seeing, or we're working with a lot of couples and a lot of moms who are struggling right now because of, heightened stress and anxiety, and hospital rules that are changing on a day-to-day basis as well. So that's where our role really comes in and helps these couples. But our main role actually as doulas is to support couples during the actual labor and birth in the hospital. And that is very different. Again, that looks different from couple to couple, depends on what their preferences are and what their goals are for that birth. So that could be massage, that could be kind of advocating for their preferences. That could be supporting the dad if he's attending the labor and birth. That could be cheerleading the mom, that, you can do it, and just offering that kind of emotional support. And then a lot of doulas are trained in breastfeeding support. So if that's something that the mother is looking into, we help with that. And then after the baby is born, the doula again will follow up on you and check on how you're doing and your emotional health. Happy, always happy to answer questions because all new moms always have a lot of questions. So we're there to be that listening ear, but also offer a lot of support and references that the mom needs.
That's really interesting. So you mentioned getting trained by the Doula Training Institute. What does that entail, and what type of background education does a person need to have in order to train with the Doula Institute?
So there are a few organizations, well-renowned organizations around the world. So some of them come from the US and some are from the UK. So I've trained with DONA International, that's DONA. It is considered to be probably the biggest doula training organization and the most respected. And they usually do in-person training. So when I did my training, they basically came down to the UAE. Actually, it was my company that invited their representative to come to Dubai. And what we did was to invite any women who was interested to go into this field. And we had, through DONA, we've trained a lot of aspiring doulas. And what that looks like is it was a 3-day training, so full days. And you go through physiology of birth, you go through emotional support and what that looks like, how you can best support the expectant couple, how birth happens. So it's important to understand all of that as well. All evidence-based information, breathing techniques, and the list goes on. So there's a lot that goes on into the training, but really prepping you to best support expectant couples and new families. You don't really need any background kind of qualifications to train as a doula. What you do need is a lot of passion. I think to be a doula is really a lot about how passionate you are in supporting and inspiring and empowering expectant couples and new families. So if you've got the passion, you can definitely be a doula.
And how do doctors, gynecologists, obstetricians, how do they view being a doula? What's their take on this profession?
Well, that's an interesting question because I think, the doula role in Dubai or in the UAE hasn't been around for very long. So I would say maybe in the last 7 or 8 years. And so, up to now, a lot of hospitals and doctors aren't aware of what a doula is and aren't aware of, the doula role. And so that is sometimes when we start to face some challenges, especially if they had no idea that this person was going to be there at the labor and birth and are, wondering who this person is and what they're doing there. So the first impression for those that aren't aware is a little bit, it's an uneasy feeling, a situation, thinking there's this other medical professional here, and there might be some, thoughts of stepping on toes and things like that. And so what we do always emphasize now when we do work with couples is please make sure your doctor is aware that you have a doula and that doula is going to be supporting you emotionally, physically, informationally during labor and birth. And if you can, explain to your doctor the role of a doula, just so that they are prepared before the actual birth and they know what to expect. What I have also started to do in the last couple of years is try to approach a lot of doctors, obstetricians, gynecologists, have a sit down with them, have a coffee with them, and just try to make them understand what our role is. And again, it's all in the aim of spreading awareness, because now we see a lot of them support our role only because they understand what we do and are recommending us to their clients. And so it's about building that support network for parents, which is what they need, having a supportive doctor and a midwife and a doula, hopefully, because that is what you need a lot of the times to have that positive, empowering birth experience. So, there has been some hospitals that actually had a ban on doulas at some point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we only got to know that when moms were coming to us telling us they're birthing in that hospital, but unfortunately, they said doulas weren't allowed. And so I'm actually really happy and proud that, I've actually taken that extra step and gone to these hospitals and tried to speak to the team, the medical team. And it really turned out that, well, for one of them, they had a bad experience with a doula who kind of overstepped her boundary. And this is where it's important that a doula gets proper training from one of the really, renowned organizations, because there is definitely a lot of guidelines that are involved. And a code of conduct. So this was, a situation where we had to approach these hospitals and say, well, this is how doulas are supposed to work. I don't know what that doula did, but this is how doulas who are well-trained would work, and they would definitely not they shouldn't be crossing any lines. And that's when, that those windows and those doors opened up with these hospitals, because now they know the true role of what a doula is. And, and we were so blessed and happy that they removed that ban, and we are now very much welcome in these hospitals.
And are you finding that doctors are referring clients to you that way, or is it the other way around?
So I think a lot of the times, or mostly, yes, doulas will tend to refer doctors more than they're referring us. And I think it's just a matter of time, but also of trust. And I think the more you are at a birth and you're working with the same doctor, and they actually get to see your work and they get to see what you're doing, and they're not feeling threatened, or they're not feeling like you're invaluable and you're not really adding any kind of value or support. So it depends on these things. And I find that the more I work with alongside a doctor, the more they tend to start recommending me or recommending doulas in general. So I really think it's more about trying to build that rapport and that relationship with doctors, because at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same goal, and that is to really be able to offer the best support to expectant couples.
Fantastic. Now, keeping in mind our students who would be watching this, what types of subjects, if you could go back to high school again, if you could go back to those years, what type of subjects would you say, pay attention, those are the types of transferable skills that you learn in those subjects that definitely would be useful for you if you went into a career as a doula?
Well, like I said, being a doula is a lot about passion, but it's also a lot about communication, right? So you do need to have really great interpersonal skills, communication skills. And I'm not exactly sure in which particular subjects you would get that, but I'm sure you do, whether it's through English or drama or any of these. These are all great subjects to really, be able to communicate well and communicate your message well, because a lot of the times, whether you're speaking to medical professionals, that requires skill as well, to just be careful with how you communicate a message across, but really also how you communicate with expectant couples. The one thing about doula work is that it is something that you really need to be careful that you don't kind of put yourself in or put your preferences in, which means, every birthing couple has their own preferences and expectations. And, sometimes I come across couples who want a certain kind of an outcome. And maybe that is not exactly what I would have done if I were the one who was expecting. And so that's where the challenge comes in sometimes, especially for start out doulas, where it's really hard for them to take themselves out of the situation, and really focus on supporting that couple with what they want. So these I believe are things that someone can already start working on how to communicate effectively with people. Also, being able to offer emotional support. So emotions play a great role. Being a great listener is something that is also very important. And sometimes we have a lot to say, but we also need to remember that we should be listening a lot as well.
Fantastic.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but...
no, definitely.
Okay.
So in talking about the work that you do, is it freelance work, or are there companies that students would apply to work as a doula?
Okay, so like I said, the doula role is relatively new. And so unfortunately, I mean, until for the past 7 years, there hasn't actually been an official company for doulas except my own that I've started 2 years ago. And that's exactly why, because there were a lot of freelance doulas in Dubai. There still are. Everybody working on their own as individual doulas. However, what I wanted to do is really build that hub or that community of doulas coming together, because again, even picking a doula, for a pregnant person or an expectant couple is not a matter of, okay, this doula has XYZ number of years of experience. Picking a doula or having a doula support you is a lot about that rapport that you can build with a doula. And what we tend to see is a lot of people would go around and meet with several doulas before they decide who they want to work with. It's like picking your doctor as well. And so I thought, how great would it be if, these couples would come to one place where they can see many doulas at the same time, be able to meet with them or e-meet with them as we're doing now. And that way it just makes the process a lot easier. Because I remember in my days, I would be running around from one interview to the next over weeks to meet up with several doulas. So about 2 years ago, I set up Belly Baby Mom officially as a registered licensed company. And I've had about 8 doulas and childbirth educators working together now. We have just recently rebranded as a collective. And what that means is individually licensed doulas working together in terms of events. So we do something called the Meet the Doulas, for example, which is now we're doing online through something like this, where people come through and they get to meet all of us all at the same time. So like I said, there's no other official companies that exist here in Dubai. And it's relatively new, and I'd love to see more of that, more kind of doulas. And we're actually hoping for, once all this COVID-19 situation gets better, we're hoping to bring down Jonah again for another training for doulas.
Amazing. That's so fantastic. Okay, Shereen, talk to us about your vision and your mission. Why did you, I know you talked about your personal experience and it really made you think, wow, this is something I can do. But what's your vision for the work that you do? What do you hope to achieve at Belly Baby Mom? And what do you hope that your clients walk away with?
So my main mission is for women and for couples to know that they have options. And because once you know that you have options and that you can take decisions, you can really have positive and empowering birth and parenting experiences. So my main goal is really to be able to spread awareness on doulas, on the doula role, and on childbirth education primarily. Of course, we do other things as breastfeeding support and baby massage and things like that. But my main 2 focuses is childbirth education and doula support. And the reason for that is because I honestly get approached by a lot of second-time moms who the first thing that they say is, oh, I wish I knew about you with my first experience.
Amazing.
And a lot of them, unfortunately, had traumatic birth experiences, and they're hoping for a different experience this time. And this is how, through their research, they came across doulas. And so I get really happy and excited that they have somehow stumbled upon us and upon the role of a doula, whether they decide to work with us or not. But I get so excited and happy for them that they now know of that option. And so, I mean, it was similar to my experiences with my 3 kids, I only got to know about doulas and childbirth educators with my third. And, you know, yes, I was the only third-time parent in those classes, but you know what I mean? It was the time that I knew about them, and I didn't know about these options with my first two. So for me, education, prenatal education is so important, especially when we live in a highly medicalized environment here, and such as a lot of other countries around the world as well. So a lot of the times moms go into birth not knowing what to expect, what medications are for, what are benefits and risks of these medications. And they tend to make decisions very quickly based on the doctor recommendation, which is great, but it's also important to have that confidence to have that conversation according to your preferences as well, which a lot of moms are missing out and couples are missing. So a big part of that for me is I'm hoping, and I work towards women and couples gaining that confidence during pregnancy and especially during labor and birth, to be able to really ask questions and question everything during the whole process. And that's when we see that these couples, no matter what kind of an experience they end up having, are left feeling very positive and empowered because they have been part of that decision process. So I, as a doula and as an educator, I work a lot on confidence building as well, because somehow it's an important part of actually even having a child.
Fantastic. So great. So anybody watching, this is Shereen Zarroug from Belly Baby Mom. She's a doula. She talked to us about how to become a doula, what to expect in this career, and really what you should be aspiring to do if you choose to go down this path. Which parts of the world would you say are very, very ahead of the game in this profession?
So I would definitely say the US, in the United States. That's where it originated from many, many years ago, but also a lot of countries in Europe as well. In the Middle East, it's still relatively new. I would say out of the Middle East, in the UAE, is probably, you know, it's probably the most advanced in terms of, you know, the number of doulas that we have. But yeah, it's still growing, and I'm really glad that it is. But yes, in the US, definitely, I mean, we follow a very similar model of care as the US. And especially when you see a highly medicalized system for birth, you tend to see more doula presence as well, because a lot of the times couples need all that information and really need that support to help them with choices as well during the labor and birth experience.
Fantastic. And my last question, what are the minimum entry requirements to do the training?
Like I said, you don't need any official, you know, background in terms of if you're trying to get into this field. I mean, it would definitely help if you do end up being a medical professional or going to medical school or doing any kind of medical training, because what's interesting is we are actually seeing some midwives in the UAE who are approaching me and asking me about doula support. So that could be for several reasons. They want to step out of the medical role, or they feel, you know, their role is really more about, you know, supporting women prenatally, which is something that we are missing here in Dubai when you work with midwives, because you primarily kind of see them and work with them during labor and birth. So anybody, honestly, from any background, medical background, in any field, like I said, my background had nothing to do with the medical field at all. And so that is why I feel if you have a passion of even just supporting people, and it doesn't have to necessarily be women, supporting women, if you have that passion to make a change in this world, that's my big goal. I really want to hope to really make big changes here in the UAE. If you have that drive and you feel like you want to make some changes, you want to, you know, make some changes for the better, and you want to really support couples, whether you're a girl or a boy, it actually is fine. We don't have male doulas yet, but we're hoping to have some soon in the future. They do exist in the US and in the UK. There are some doulas. And my husband actually is also a childbirth educator. So he has done the childbirth education training, which is actually quite nice because men and husbands-to-be, fathers-to-be, also need to be educated in childbirth. So there's definitely scope for both males and females to somehow get into this field. And the biggest advice I would say, or not advice, but the biggest thing I would say is really just having that kind of passion to want to make changes and to really want to support people in their journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shereen. That was a brilliant insight into something that I knew really very little about, and I feel really excited about how this new career is growing. It's gaining more momentum and more awareness, especially in this part of the world. Very, very exciting. So anybody out there wanting to learn more about being a doula, please reach out to Shereen at Belly Baby Mom. What is the website again, Shereen?
So it's www.bellybabymom.com.
Excellent. And do you have an Instagram handle?
Sure. So we're on Instagram and Facebook, same at Belly Baby Mom.
Fantastic. And that brings us to the end of another amazing digital spotlight. Thank you everybody for watching, and I look forward to bringing another amazing professional to our spotlight tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Maria. Take care.